It's the year 1997, and Albania is on the brink of a civil war. Just 5 years after its first elections, after 4 years of communist dictatorship, the country is close to collapsing. Protests against the government that started out peacefully turned violent. The streets are ruled by armed gangs and militias, and hundreds of thousands of people are fleeing to neighboring countries. So, how could this happen? How could a country descend into chaos so quickly after finally escaping a brutal dictatorship? Welcome to the Corvus Chronicles, and today we're looking at the pyramid scheme that almost led to a civil war in Albania. Before we take a closer look at the Ponzi scheme itself, we need to understand the history of modern Albania. For over 4 decades, from 1946 to 1991, Albania was a totalitarian communist dictatorship with a completely state-run economy and no private property, like a lot of other Eastern European or Balkan countries. However, what made Albania unique was its level of isolation. It was almost impossible to travel to the country, trade with other nations was almost non-existent, and they even withdrew from the Warsaw Pact in 1968. It was basically like North Korea today. So when the country finally started opening up in 1991, it was one of the poorest countries in Europe, and the Albanian population was unfamiliar with free market institutions and practices. The rapid transition led to a financial and regulatory system which was completely unprepared for a capitalistic economy. The official state-run banks were unable to satisfy the private sector demands for loans, and so an informal lending system run by private businesses and individuals started taking hold. Now, some of those companies were legit and filled an important niche in the Albanian economy at the time. However, others saw an opportunity for a quick buck in a completely unregulated market, and they started companies that ran essentially pyramid schemes. Now, if you don't know what a pyramid scheme is, here's a quick run-through. A pyramid, or Ponzi scheme, pretends to be an investment product, but it really just moves money from newer to older investors. Instead of actually selling a product or investing into something real, it promises high returns by paying the earliest participants using the cash brought in by people who joined later. So the profit is actually just redistributing deposits, and the ones who profit off of it are the ones at the tip of the pyramid. A pyramid scheme therefore requires a constant inflow of new recruits to finance the existing liabilities. Most schemes actually look legitimate at first. People get paid and everything runs smoothly, until at some point it suddenly stops working and the whole structure collapses overnight. In the end, a small group at the top typically cashes out early while the majority lose their money. While those schemes started out small in Albania, they quickly rose in popularity, mainly due to the high interest rates offered by the companies. Some companies tried to partially finance their interest rates with legit investing by purchasing real estate or stocks in foreign companies. Others utilized more illegal activities like smuggling goods into Yugoslavia. By 1996, the leading companies already offered 4 to 5% a month, and that rate just kept on climbing. With more and more companies entering the market, the rates kept on rising, 8, 10, 15, 20% a month. At its peak, some companies promised 100 or even 150% returns per month. Everyone wanted a piece of that pie, and by the end of 1996, 2/3 of the Albanian population was invested in a pyramid scheme, and the liabilities associated with the schemes rose to $1.2 billion. That is almost half of Albania's GDP at the time. From farmers to businessmen, people started selling everything they owned, even their house, to put the money into the schemes. A resident of the capital Tirana said the city during that time smelled and sounded like a slaughterhouse, as farmers drove their animals to the market to invest the proceeds into the pyramid schemes. The government meanwhile remained idle and watched the chaos unfold. This was probably partially due to the fact that the pyramid companies were big donors of the ruling Democratic Party. The Albanian president, Sali Berisha, even defended the companies when the International Monetary Fund warned the people of the dangers of pyramid schemes. Berisha accused the IMF of trying to shut down Albania's most successful companies. The dream, however, suddenly turned into a nightmare on the 19th of November 1996, when one of the companies, Sude, defaulted on their debts, and the house of cards started to collapse. Due to the collapse, the people suddenly lost their trust in the system and tried to take their money out of the remaining companies. However, since a pyramid scheme works by redistributing the money invested, there was not enough money left to pay the investors. One pyramid scheme after the other declared bankruptcy, and even though the government tried to step in by freezing bank accounts of some of the companies, it was simply not enough. Peaceful protests quickly turned into violent riots. The Bank of Albania had to limit the amount of money that could be withdrawn. Inflation reached 30% and the national currency lost 40% of its value. By spring of 1997, the Albanian government had completely lost control of the country. Armed gangs and militias were roaming the street. Over 1 million weapons were looted from armories around the country, left unguarded due to soldiers and police officers deserting. And it is estimated that almost every male from the age of 10 upwards had at least one firearm, and approximately 2,000 people died as a result of the unrests. Violence spread throughout the country. Tax and customs offices were burned down, industries closed, and some cities were ruled by criminal groups trying to take advantage of the chaos. All of this led to interference from other countries by March of 1997. The United States sent the US Marines to evacuate American citizens, and an Italian-led UN peacekeeping force consisting of over 7,000 soldiers from 11 nations arrived in April. In June, snap elections were held, which the Socialist Party won. The president resigned shortly afterwards, and with international assistance, the new government was able to bring the fighting and rioting to an end. However, it would still take months for the new government to take control of the whole country and properly work through what actually happened. Most of the people responsible for the pyramid schemes never faced justice since they left the country in time, and some of the politicians who supported the scheme had very successful careers afterwards. The ex-president Berisha even served as a prime minister from 2005 to 2013. The ones who suffered the most are the people of Albania. Many of them lost their entire savings, their farms, their homes, and especially their trust into the very young democracy. However, since then, Albania has finally started to prosper, with a solid economic growth and open negotiations about accession to the European Union. Fortunately, pyramid schemes of this level are extremely rare. However, the Albanian scheme is a prime example of what can happen when the government has no oversight over the country's financial institutions and when little regulation exists to keep criminal activity in check. It should also be a reminder to all of us that if something sounds too good to be true, like a 150% a month interest rate, it probably isn't true. Thank you all for watching. If you liked this video, please leave a like, comment and subscribe for more videos like this. Bye!